Hey guys, we haven't done a flat earth video for a while, so why not do one today? I saw this video on Globebuster's channel and talks about centrifugal force and why that disproves the spherical earth. Apparently he brought in a mechanical engineer to make this point. It's so funny when conspiracy theorists bring in someone who is supposedly an expert in the field, and that somehow makes their point more valid or something, as if that person represents the field or everyone in the field itself. Like you could pick any of the other 99.9% of mechanical engineers and they would tell you the earth is round, but instead you pick this one. Looks like we're picking some chairs here.
Hello everyone! Today I'm going to share a fantastic new proof of our stationary Earth. This proof comes from a mechanical engineer who goes by the name David.
Feels like everyone these days are called David.
Now, David is a flat earther, but what we'll be presenting today deals mostly with proving our Earth is stationary. But discovering our Earth does not rotate at 1,000 miles per hour is a necessary step for most truth seekers before they can accept flat Earth.
If you really wanted to convince people that the earth is flat, there's a lot more to do than just proving the earth to be stationary. You have to, prove the earth to be actually flat, that's probably the most important one, and then prove it's stationary, then prove our concept of space doesn't exist, etc. Then prove that our currently accepted understanding of physics is wrong. Man, there's just so much to prove, and you actually have to disprove every physics paper out there pretty much. Rejecting scientific consensus is hard, You'd have to do a lot of work to convince people. It's also hard because, you're just wrong.
For me, proving a stationary Earth is quite simple. According to mainstream science, the Earth is spinning at the equator at the supersonic rate of 1,040 miles per hour. That's about as fast as this jet appears to be flying.
I am so tired of making this point. How many times do I have to say this before it gets through your thick skulls? When the earth rotates, everything rotates with it. Everything on the earth and even the air. You're not going to feel anything because you only feel acceleration and not constant motion. You know what? I'm going to skip the video to the main point. He tries to follow up with this idea of the spinning earth and I just can't stand this garbage anymore.
Hey guys, my name is David and I'm a mechanical engineer. Other than that, there isn't anything super special or noteworthy about me.
Don't worry, you're pretty special.
Let's assume, and every ball earther would agree with me, that every mass on planet Earth is being pulled exactly to the center of the Earth, which would be the center of all the masses around us in essence. Now imagine any point on the ball Earth and picture that point spinning around the axis of rotation of the Earth. No matter which point you pick, with the exception of exact north or south poles, all of those points have the same path. In other words, depending on your location, you may be closer or further from the axis of rotation, but every person and every mass is going around the axis with uniform circular motion. Again, any given point is spinning in a flat circle around the axis of rotation of the Earth. This means that there has to be a centripetal force that has a tendency to fling you in the opposite direction of the axis of rotation, not opposite the center of the Earth, but opposite the center of your own flat circular path. If we are to believe a ball Earth, then of course we know this force would be small and wouldn't overcome the force of gravity. So of course I'm not arguing we should be flying off into space, if that's what you want to call it. But as it turns out, this force is not negligible. This has huge ramifications because what it means is that everything on the spinning globe should be pulled, however small, to the equator. A tendency to flatten out due to the spin and gravity always pulling you to the center.
Alright, I let that video play for far too long. Finally, now I have a chance to respond. So to summarize the point of the flat earther, because of the spin of the globe, everyone standing on Earth would move in a circular path parallel to the equator. And because of that, there's a centrifugal force that would pull you in a direction away from the Earth, but isn't exactly directly opposite of the gravitational force. By the way, I think the word you were looking for is centrifugal force, not centripetal force. I think you got them mixed up. Centripetal is the force that would pull you towards the center of the spin, not away from it. Kind of weird for a mechanical engineer to get that wrong. Anyway, back to the main point, they claim that this would give you a slight pull towards the side if you consider the vectors of all forces in play. Now, the answer to this is actually incredibly simple. I made a video a while back talking about this exact same point. I think I did a pretty good explanation of it, so check it out if you have time. Otherwise, I'm going to reiterate my point here, although I may be just repeating myself a bit. Videos should be responded to on an individual basis, I guess. Okay, so this is what the forces look like. We have the force of gravity and we have the centrifugal force. As you can see, they point in different directions, but not exactly the opposite. If they pointed in opposite directions, then then gravity would just cancel out the centrifugal force and we wouldn't be here talking about this right now. The mechanical engineer flat earther is right about one point, that the centrifugal force has to point away from the circle that we rotate around, which is parallel to the equator. You get a gold star for that one. Now, if you've learned anything about vectors, you know that they cancel out each other and have an overall direction. The centrifugal force here is actually incredibly tiny in comparison to gravity, so gravity would negate most of it, but it still has a small directional influence. So why is it that we don't feel ourselves being pulled in one direction even slightly? That's because our Earth actually compensates for that. I say compensate as if the Earth is making that decision, but it's more like it conforms to it due to physics. As we know, the Earth isn't entirely spherical. It is a little ovalish due to the spin of the Earth. You can kind of think of it in the way that this overall force vector applies to everything on the Earth, not just us, and that includes the Earth itself. The crust of the Earth is slightly pulled towards the apex of the spin and gathers up to form a hill of some sort. This bulge eventually contributes to the slightly flattened out shape of the Earth. When that happens, we're not actually standing so that our feet are pointing towards the center of the Earth. Instead, it is pointing exactly with the overall force vector that we drew out earlier. In other words, because the Earth conforms to this force vector, we are standing in a position in which that overall force vector points directly downwards for us. That's why we only feel the force downwards and not towards the side. This does not contradict with anything we know about a spherical Earth. And also, this isn't the first time I heard that argument either, so you aren't very unique. Anyway, David here goes a bit further, so let's have a look at that.
Mainstream science actually acknowledges this phenomenon because they themselves say that the Earth is oblate and bulges at the equator and has less of a circular diameter pole to pole because of this. And yet, I have never once heard that masses are pulled to the equator.
That's because it's not pulled towards the equator. Also, for colloquial language, it's just much easier to say we are pulled towards the center of the Earth. Now, if we say gravity, which we most likely do, then yes, that is towards the center of the Earth. But if we're talking about the overall force after centrifugal influence, then that would be ever just so slightly different. I can't believe your argument is, hey, science actually has an explanation for my point, but I've just never heard them say something that is incredibly specific, as if that gives you points for your argument.
So to summarize, we are supposed to believe that uniform circular motion, or spin of the Earth, is powerful enough to smush the ball, yet we can't measure even the slightest force of pull toward the equator.
It's because the Earth is squished that we don't feel anything, because that changes the angle of the ground we stand on, which then makes us perpendicular to that overall force.
Thank you guys for listening, and I just urge everyone out there to think critically and do your own research.
Yep, you should do your own research so you come to the wrong conclusions like flat earthers do. Seriously, all this do your own research thing needs to stop. If you actually did proper research, you know what science says about your concern and why your argument is completely false. If you really did your own research, you wouldn't be a flat earther to begin with. It's as simple as that. Anyway, short video today, guys. Got a juicier one next week, so stay tuned for that. Thank you to my patrons, Fireshard, Liam, Alan Morton, and JN. And this time I would also like to shout out some other patrons: John, Dennis Paik, Rick Klenn, Chris Britton, Dave Osler, Tom Schlapfer, and David Costopoulos, along with everyone else supporting this channel on a lower level. Last thing I would like to mention before ending this video, if you have any video requests you would like to send me, please do so. I'm always keeping my eye out for the latest in bullshit. Alright, bye.